the what's the fucking name of the legislation? It's like a Remain in Mexico Act or whatever. He basically also kept Title 42 in place. There were some hurdles. There were at times when the Remain in Mexico, he basically kept, and Title 42, he basically, Title 42, he completely kept intact.
Pork chops. I'm eating pork chops.
That was.
I'm eating pork chops. Hey, do you care?
That was pretty devastating. But it doesn't end there. Okay. What he ended up doing after that was allow the Republicans to fucking counter message on immigration for the entire 4 years of his administration and consistently pull on the immigrants are doing crimes, they're rapists, they're fucking drug dealers, they're murderers nonsense without any sort of effective counter messaging on it by bringing people back to reality on the matter. And in that process, people became fucking crazy over it. Okay? So then the Democrats turned around and responded in the worst way possible, which was to lean in. To lean into the xenophobia, to lean into the right-wing narratives. Immigration in this country, for years, was seen as an economic burden. Okay? It was an economic policy. Now, I can argue on that front about how that was also false and that was also incorrect, but that's not what we're talking about now, because the Republicans moved from they're taking our jobs to they're raping our daughters. Okay? They moved further right on immigration and successfully turned at least the conversation in American media to immigrants are an issue
and you raped her.
That needs to be dealt with as a national security problem. That was new, okay? And they were able to successfully change the narrative, and they turned it into a crime issue. It's no longer a labor issue, now it's a crime issue, okay? Now this is Hitlerian to begin with, okay? It's just completely Hitlerian. It's born out of nothing but right-wing hysteria and white supremacist attitudes towards people that don't look like you. That's it. Because if you look at the actual data, if you look at the actual data, undocumented migrants are responsible for less crime per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens are.
We hog all the talent.
If you look at the actual data,
so anybody that's
when they try to tie the drug, the fentanyl crisis back to like brown people, that's also built on falsehoods.
And then, and then guess what they do?
Donald Trump runs around the entire country and keeps saying, Donald Trump keeps saying that undocumented migrants have killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. He says that in campaign stops left and right. He said that at the RNC. This number is insane. It is completely made up. Okay? It's completely made up. The actual number of homicides, according to Customs and Border Patrol, that undocumented migrants have committed in 2024, this past fiscal year so far, is 23. 20 fucking 3. 023. Okay, not 23,000. 23
right now.
Okay?
That's it.
And that is what is so unimaginably cruel about the way that these guys have been able to just openly lie about this without any contest whatsoever.
All those DACA people go, I want to hire my friend from across overseas.
Now, Donald Trump will try to play fast and loose. Republicans do this all the time when it comes to undocumented, undocumented citizens and the way to communicate with them, where he will try to package the fentanyl deaths with the migrant crisis, which is not a crisis at all. When you look at the actual data from the Department of Homeland Security, and this is incredibly consistent throughout the Trump years, incredibly consistent throughout the Biden years, it's just the reality. Drugs that are coming over the border are apprehended at regular points of entry. Okay, ports and like actual border crossings inside of cars. Drugs are not shipped over the border in the ass cheeks of a fucking migrant. Okay, that's not how this works. People are not just like smuggling drugs in their fanny pack as they cross the fucking Rio Grande Valley, as they cross the goddamn desert.
You get to
that is
America,
inconsistent with reality. It doesn't even make fucking sense when you think about it. We're talking about metric tons of fentanyl and chemical compounds necessary to cook up drugs. Okay? Why the fuck would that be a consistent, reliable way to traffic drugs?
And then they get
when those guys are getting fucking apprehended at the border.
Going in America even bigger, so it's worse. So they spent, like, I mean, like what? Like, I mean, duh.
All of the drugs that are coming over the border are
sat down and
stopped
about
at regular points of entry.
Boss?
Okay, 90%.
International drug lord. There's no.
And they're not undocumented citizens that are trying to traffic these drugs over the border. They are American citizens.
America that has ever been down that pipeline
American citizens.
How can I be an international drug lord?
90% Lamau.
There's maybe two.
Mules exist,
I bet there's
dude.
2 people that have ever
I love you,
been
Chatter,
like,
but you're wrong.
Drug lord?
And I know, that it sounds insane because you have been led astray because nobody talks about the actual facts.
Dude,
but this is the Department of Homeland Security.
Saying that people don't move drugs. Like there's
less than 10% of drugs are actually caught, but go off king.
There's not at least you're telling me there's not at least 10 people that are crossing the border. Like you realize how easy it is. Like I mean, I'm saying
the mules are American citizens inside of their cars with American license plates. That is the easiest way to sneak drugs across the border. What do you think is a more successful strategy? Giving random people who paid a jackal like 10 grand or whatever some drugs to cross the border with drugs and then get apprehended by Customs and Border Patrol, or to chop up a car and put the fentanyl inside of the fucking car? What do you think? Not a jackal, a coyote, sorry.
This is how big a kilo of cocaine is.
I never said it was all migrants. No, you said 90% Lamau.
Look at that small knife.
And also said mules exist, dude. Yeah, mules do exist. They're just American citizens. But that goes against the narrative that you have been taught, so it doesn't matter.
Look, that's $1 million right there. Not $1 million instantly, like everyone thinks, because instant gratification. But that's $1 million if you go and do it the right way.
90% of drugs aren't caught. Okay, brother. So do you think if 90% of drugs aren't caught, but 90% of the drugs that are caught, okay, 90% of the drugs that are caught at regular points of entry, do you think that all of the other drugs are actually secretly being trafficked over the border through undocumented immigrants?
Yes.
Is that what you think is going on?
Where do you get cocoa beans
Or do you think it's more likely that 90% of the drugs that are not caught are still also crossing through regular points of entry?
You can pack a salad and bring a bunch of sassafras into the United States.
I agree with that. Okay.
Sassafras.
I mean, he's not only moving the fucking, not only put the goalposts on a motor at this point, motorized goalposts up in here, but he's also coming to terms with my argument, I guess, even though he originally approached the subject matter as though he was in disagreement. I don't even know where he got the 90% of drugs are not caught, or less than 10% of drugs are caught over the border. I don't know where he got that information from, but it doesn't even fucking matter. Because the ones that are caught at 90% are caught at the fucking regular points of entry.
So, yeah, duh. You go and you say, hey, oh, we caught them. Guys, we caught. They sit there and they say, we've caught over 9,000 kilos of cocaine crossing our borders. Any normal person goes,
they only find a small percentage is my point. I know, but you can't suspect if the data is readily available that 90% of the drugs that are apprehended are actually coming in through regular points of entry and only 10% are through like random migrant crossings or people slingshotting over the fucking border wall or whatever. Okay, or building tunnels under the fucking border or whatever.
They don't know the weight of that other 10%.
Why would you ever make the assertion that?
Is it 90%
why would you ever make the false
of that
assertion
10%?
that actually secretly these guys are all trafficking the drugs through the pockets of Guatemalan abuelas? Okay. Because that's the assertion that the Republican Party is making. That's what they try to lead you to believe. Okay? According to the USSC, in 2020 fiscal year, 80.1% of all drug traffickers are U.S. citizens. Of course. Of course they are. It doesn't make any fucking sense.
Well, it's not hard.
It doesn't make any sense for them not to be U.S. citizens. They are less likely to get additional scrutiny. That's the point.
How many people came over during Scarface era? When they fucking when Castro did that shit, and then they have babies, and then boom, they're all drug. They have 3 kids. 100,000 people come over. They all have 3 kids. That's 300,000 people. They grow up. They have kids already. That's 3. There's a million that's a million drug traffickers right there.
This overheated and started leaking.
Right there. Yeah, it takes 40 years to get a million drug traffickers within our United States. That's it.
We got to the final stage of this.
Guess what's going to happen in another 30, 40 years?
I used this cable for years and years, and it was very reliable, and it was very good. But we have officially come to the end of this cable. This cable's lifespan. I was like, why is my fucking arm so warm? And why does it smell like, there's some...
I don't know.
Something
maybe
gone.
Because you're a stinky motherfucker.
Something's like cooking a little bit. It's done. We've come to the end of the lifespan of this fucking cable. Rest in peace. R.I.P.
Up by 4 within the margin of error. Then Joe Biden down by 3 in Pennsylvania, down 1 in Wisconsin, and only up by 1 in Michigan within the margin of error. These are 3 to 5 point movements towards the Democratic ticket. Clear momentum, and it's clearly angering Donald Trump.
But take us inside the numbers. Who is Harris appealing to that Joe Biden was not when we had these numbers?
Yeah, so, okay. Is it that Harris is getting Republican voters? No. It's not that she's getting Donald Trump voters from 2020. What is she doing? Number one, she's coalescing the Democratic base. So look, in Biden this spring, he was getting only 90% of the voters who voted for him back in 2020. Look at it now. What do we see? We see Kamala Harris is getting 93% of those voters. So we see that momentum. The other thing that we see is those untraditional voters. Those voters, there was all this talk that Donald Trump was going to get these voters off the sidelines and get them to vote for him who didn't vote in 2020. Back in the spring, look at that. Joe Biden was only getting 28% of the 2020 non-voters. Look at where Kamala Harris is now. She's getting 43% of those voters, a 15-point jump. So Kamala Harris is doing 2 things here. Number one, she's getting more of those untraditional voters, and number 2, she's coalescing that Democratic base.
Are you seeing signs in other polling of the Harris momentum as well?
Yeah, okay. So if it's just one poll, I'm not that interested. But take a look here. This is among those certain to vote. This is the Democrat versus Trump in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. This is an Ipsos poll that came out last week. Look at this, the June margin, Biden versus Trump. We see Trump was up by 2, very similar to what we saw in those New York Times Siena College polls. Look at where we are now in this August margin. Look at that, +2 for Harris. So again, a 4-point movement towards Harris, again within the margin of error. And the last thing I'll note, look at this. If Harris just wins up in the Great Lakes, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, she can lose Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia, and she gets to exactly 270 electoral votes.
Oh, perfect.
All right, so momentum it is today.
Momentum it is.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you.
CNN's Isaac Dover is here with the very latest. How does the Harris team view things this morning, Isaac?
I hate Harry.
Well, look, John, they obviously are glad to see good poll numbers following a good couple of weeks for the vice president since she got into this campaign. Remember, we're only talking about 3 weeks here since Joe Biden dropped out. But they're trying not to get too ahead of themselves. Harris herself was in San Francisco yesterday at a fundraiser, and she said to donors there that she's never been one to really believe in the polls, whether they're up or they're down. What we know is the stakes are so high, and we can take nothing for granted in this moment. And look, what the Harris campaign is focused on here is making sure that people don't get feel like the race is
It's
done,
like,
feel like they don't have to
the
do
stakes are
a lot
high.
of the
They're
work
gonna
here.
make sure they're gonna say
There
that
are very
they're
few
gonna make
people
fun
who
of
believe
trannies on
that this
national
race won't
television.
come down
They're
to
gonna say we're child
a
predators.
couple
They're
of
gonna get us,
100,000
throw us in
voters
jail.
at most
Yeah,
between
the
a couple of
stakes are high
states,
for the
and
Republicans
that's
because
the
they're
sort
gonna
of thing
take
that
over and
could
start
even,
trafficking children.
doesn't matter where the popular vote goes, could end up swinging the Electoral College.
It's amazing to think about Democrats talking about complacency when just 3.5 weeks ago it was Republicans talking about complacency there. So what does the week have in store in terms of a policy rollout and I guess the first ever appearance between President Biden and Kamala Harris since he has left the race?
Yeah, we saw them briefly on the tarmac when that prisoner exchange happened at Andrews Air Force Base, but this will be an event on Thursday in Maryland, right outside D.C., with the two of them there together. It is put out as an official government event, not as a campaign event exactly, but they clearly are going to be doing it in the sense of passing the torch. What the White House has told us so far is that it will be focused on lowering costs for Americans. And what that is important is because not only is it Harris and Biden talking about economic issues, but it's the two of them staying very closely connected to each other. And that is something that we've seen since Harris got into this race, even as Republicans in the Trump campaign have tried to say that Biden's record is bad and Harris is tied to it in a bad way. That's not the approach that they're taking.
Isaac Dovere, great to see you this morning. Always great to have you on in the morning. Appreciate it. Sarah?
All right, here we go again. False claims about crowd size from Donald Trump, and even more talk about Kamala Harris's race and childless cat ladies from his running mate, J.D. Vance. Just a few of the new and familiar lines of attack we heard this weekend as Donald Trump tonight sits down for an interview with Elon Musk. Let's bring in CNN's Steve Contorno. Steve, some Republicans want to see a more disciplined, as you heard from Isaac Dovere, message from Trump going after Harris. But is that what they're getting?
Certainly doesn't seem so far, Sarah. I think scattershot is probably the best word to describe what we saw from the former president over the weekend. He made fun of Senator John Tester's weight, the Democrat in Montana. He called Tim Walz, quote, very freakish. He said Harris Walz supporters were pink-haired Marxists, looters, perverts, flag burners, Hamas supporters, drug dealers, gun grabbers, and human traffickers. And he also continued to be
solid.
Is he wrong?
Solid. I think it's gonna be awesome when he has, like, in the words of who was it? Fuck, I'm forgetting now. In the words of that one Joe Rogan guy who was being interviewed by Joe Rogan,
I gotta go work out.
never mind, this bit doesn't work. He's going to have one of the most neurodivergent adults on the planet try to have a conversation with fucking Donald Trump on a website that is notoriously finicky. It's gonna be great. It's content, okay?
fixated on the crowd size of what Vice President Harris is getting versus his own. In fact, in a series of social media posts...
Who was the guy who said full-blown autism?
He has Asperger's, I thought.
How am I forgetting that? Oh, it was Robert F. Kennedy. Yeah, RFK, my favorite scientist, who said, you never see an adult with full-blown autism.
He shared debunked footage and claims that Harris was doctoring her crowd size. These were AI images that they were sharing. He said that she should be disqualified because they faked their crowd sizes when these photos were easily debunked. Meanwhile, his running mate continues to be answering questions about some of his past statements and trying to focus the attacks more on what they say are the anti-family policies of the Harris-Walz ticket. Take a listen to what J.D. Vance told our CNN over the weekend.
Why would you even be outside for that shit?
I think that what it is two people, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who aren't comfortable in their own skin because they aren't comfortable with their policy positions for the American people. And so they're name calling instead of actually telling the American people how they're going to make their lives.
This is such a funny line.
What
the Democrats are resorting to name calling because they said you're weird is my favorite fucking bar so far. It's up there with the Democrats really need to stop with this violent rhetoric. What's the violent rhetoric? Saying Trump's policies are Hitlerian.
He gave his 20 policies today.
Democrats need to stop with the violent rhetoric. They've really tuned it up a lot. Democrats really need to stop with name calling. Bro, you're running on the name call ticket. What the fuck?
It's better. I think that's weird, Dana, but look, they can call.
Like, name calling is what Trump is good at, or used to be. Not as much anymore. Now he says, Kamala, and you know, that's it.
Me whatever they want to.
Do you believe Kamala Harris is black?
I believe that Kamala Harris is whatever she says she is, but I believe importantly that President Trump is right that she's a chameleon. She pretends to be one thing in front of one audience.
Now, still not much campaign action from Donald Trump this week.
He still has bangers every now and then, like New Scum. That's a banger.
Because
like,
she's black.
I
so
recognize that. Real recognize real. Okay.
A lizard. It takes a
Gavin
lizard person.
Newscomb,
Yeah, it
banger.
takes a lizard person. No lizard person, Chad.
Undeniable. Okay. He still got it every now and then when it matters, in moments that matter. But overall, much worse than before.
Though he will, as you said, Sarah, speak to Elon Musk later today. J.D. Vance, meanwhile, will be more active on the campaign trail in the coming days.
Steve, just curious what you can tell me about the Trump campaign saying that they have been hacked. What do we know on that front?
Your doggy needs a blankie. What's it eating?
Yeah, there's still a lot we're still trying to figure out about this. The Trump campaign claims that a, quote, high-ranking official in the campaign was hacked from Microsoft by Iranian hackers. Now, Iran, we should say, has so far denied this and is unclear if Iran was responsible. Microsoft has so far declined to comment. The U.S. government has sort of not shared it with public any details that it has had at this point. This is all stemming from Politico reporting over the weekend that it had received emails including internal communications and a research dossier on J.D. Vance that the campaign had put together. The campaign in a statement saying these documents were obtained illegally from foreign sources hostile to the United States.
New poll, 55% of voters in swing states thinks that Donald Trump is weird.
This is registered voters across the and I think this also gives you an indication that the Kamala Harris campaign.
Bro, I swear to God, I'm seeing the dominoes fall, dude. I have personally never fucking seen like the Democratic Party actually lean into some good shit ever. They always run so goddamn scared. Oh my God, I'm so happy. It's just, there's still so much more that the Democratic Party needs to do, especially in terms of like the ongoing genocide. But overall, it does feel weird to see them actually do things that I've been begging for them to do for fucking years. It feels great to have this vindication at the very least. Like, I'm not exactly pro-Democratic Party by any means, as you guys know, and actively criticize them. Some of those issues that they criticize them on is this shit. So, you know, it makes me feel a little happy in spite of all of the awful in spite of all the other awful stuff that they have not moved on at all, in spite of the reality that, like, on immigration they're doing a horrible job.
So yeah, of course, because they can put tampon containers in the boys' restrooms across every
the fact that the Tim Walz choice and what that spells, the fact that they're like running on the Republicans are weird. We want to feed children. They want to fucking talk about children's genitals. They want to do genital inspection day in every state.
We can get some diplomacy and we can get some more green cards and ship over people because like that's what they support. That's the shit that they do. And both sides do that, but the Democrats are the ones that are obviously doing
fucking awesome.
Is working. Yeah, so this is registered voters across the 7 closest states back in the 2020 campaign: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Earn their position. Kamala Harris, 45% of voters say that she earned her position. Compare that to Donald Trump, just 42%. Donald Trump and his campaign is losing the messaging war right here. How about they are weird? This is not where Donald Trump wants to be leading it. But 55% of voters in those 7 states say that Donald Trump is weird, compared to just 39% for Harris. So the Harris campaign...
Bro, that is a dagger, okay? That is a dagger. And it actually pairs well with what I was talking about, because it is something that Donald Trump despises, right? Here's the Atlantic article. This is the most important part of the Atlantic article. Something else, and something quite important, has changed. The whole landscape of the campaign has been transformed. The rise of Harris instantly cast Trump in a new light. He formerly seemed more ominous and threatening, which, whatever its political drawbacks, signals strength. A thing that I've been saying over and over again. That's why the weird thing is so much better than just saying he's scary and a racist and a dictator.
What the hell is
now he seems not just old, but low energy, stale, even pathetic. He has become the political version of Fat Elvis. You feel me? I told you guys. It is a perfect way. It is a perfect way to capture the attention of moderates, those who are not paying super close attention to this race. Because the Democrats, I think, are correct when they say the Republicans have Nazi-style policies. But obviously, consistently saying they're racist is not hitting all of the avenues, all of the fucking demographics that it's supposed to hit. When you call them weird, on the other hand, you basically deflate the entirety of their culture war narratives that they run on. They're weird. They have this like pathological obsession with trans people. They have this pathological obsession with like children's genitals. They have this pathological obsession with like women being breeders. Like they have to be bred. Women have to be bred. It's obsessive. It's gross. But most importantly, it neutralizes it. Because if they were fucking talking about this on the you know, if they were talking about this as like as though they're scared, Republicans can run on a message of being strong, right? Ooh, the Democrats are scared of us. It's because we're strong. When you call them fucking weird, all of a sudden, they're not strong. They're just gross. You no longer...
Weird.
You know, it's like being in an argument with someone and they say that your breath stinks.
Dude, I mean, they're calling
That's
out
actually
JD
fucking
Vance,
awesome.
like,
I never even thought about that. That's like the nuclear option.
He is in this college dorm, and it's like, dude, the dude's a fucking military guy. Like, I mean, he's not your sorority girl that gets $100,000 alliance in addition to her $200,000 tuition a year. Why do I have an ad?
Sorry, honey, it's a work thing. Mine's also a work thing. I just need someone to cover my shift.
So is mine. Alan says your business vehicle is now covered with Progressive.
Protected 24/7, just like your home and auto.
Oh, that's great.
So dinner time's just phone time now?
Sorry. You know, I heard that ground turkey is the healthiest poultry.
Why is Hasan making shit about me? The producers?
You know what? Never mind. Just be on your phones.
Mel Brooks. Great take, Chad.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. What's with the sandwich names?
Oh, they're just nods to my time in the Army.
Oh, but what's the Steven named after?
Steven is from Navy Federal Credit Union. They've been helping with my finances since I enlisted.
When did this fucker
You want
start
another
putting more
Steven,
ads?
Steven?
I don't have time for this. I'm gonna go work out.